Hey there draft fans, it is LB3 back again with another draft profile video. In our last video we took a look at LSU safety Grant Delpit, and to go ahead and keep the LSU train rolling, we are taking a look at LSU cornerback Kristian Fulton in this video. We did Delpit because he got third place in a previous poll, and now we are taking a look at Fulton because he got first place in my most recent poll. So let's see which LSU player I like better and take a look at Fulton, who is fighting for draft position in a very crowded second tier of cornerbacks. Let's take a look at Fulton's film and see where he should go in a very talented cornerback class. To get started with, we are going to take a look at Fulton's athleticism using Player Profiler. First thing you'll probably notice is a very good 40-yard dash time with Fulton running sub 4.5 with good height and weight for the cornerback position. His explosive scores are on average, decent jumps, but not great in either. His agility score is more concerning with a good performance in the 3-cone drill, but a very poor performance in the 20-yard shuttle drill. Fulton is not a perfect athlete or even close to it, but he is functional. A good straight line speed athlete who is not overly explosive or fluid with some slightly tight hips. And while it isn't a perfect profile, there's nothing about it that suggests he can't succeed in the NFL. Now that we're done with his athleticism, we are going to move on and talk about his strengths and weaknesses. Fulton is a player that has some very clear limitations and some clear ways where he wins. These strengths are generally all things that should translate to the NFL, and the weaknesses are largely things that are not likely to be improved on once he gets to the NFL, so you should have an idea of what player you are getting when you draft him. With that in mind, let's take a look at his first strength, which is that he is good at sticking with vertical routes down the field. Kristian Fulton does not have great downfield speed, but he has enough, and he uses his hands and overall technique well to make it so receivers can rarely beat him downfield, even when he went up against top and speedy wide receivers. Other than sometimes he's overly aggressive in going up and getting the ball, or just goes up against receivers who just make incredible plays, he should rarely be beat down the field. Not being a liability deep can be a big benefit for a cornerback, and is a reason he should be able to start immediately. On the first play, he's running with a much larger wide receiver, and he does end up tripping on this play, but he is still able to keep his arms and eyes up to help stop the underthrown pass. The next play that we're looking at, he basically runs the route for the wide receiver, and while I would have preferred he makes more of a play for the interception, he's easily able to disrupt the throw. Moving on to the next strength, the next thing we are taking a look at ties with the last strength of how well he is able to read the wide receiver's eyes and hands, track the ball, and disrupt the pass at the catch point. Generally for cornerbacks, they can either try and turn and track the ball in the air to try and make a play, or they can keep their eyes on the wide receiver, try to use clues from the wide receiver like where they're looking, where they're putting their hands, try and disrupt the pass. Fulton honestly does both fairly well, but he is definitely better than most corners at using the wide receiver's eyes and hands to disrupt the pass. This can be a big help, and he definitely has some very impressive pass breakups because of this. On this example play, he keeps his eyes on the wide receiver the whole time, without interfering with wide receiver, is able to get his hands in between the ball and the wide receiver's hands for an easy pass deflection. The final strength is the opposite end of the cover spectrum, and it is how well he's able to read the quarterback's eyes and close to make plays on the ball. Like I mentioned earlier, Fulton does not have elite burst, so he does have some limitations, but he's very instinctive in zone coverage and has natural ball skills, so he can shine when allowed to play with his eyes towards the cornerback. He offers a lot of versatility in his ability to play in a variety of schemes and be successful in all of them. On the first play, he passes off the first wide receiver, and when he sees the quarterback pulling back to throw, he springs in to make the interception. The next play that we're looking at, he sees the quarterback getting ready to release the ball into the flat, and he's able to jump the route and should have had a pick six, but at least makes the pass breakup. Now we are done with the strengths, and we are taking a look at the weaknesses, which unfortunately with Fulton, I think there will be limitations that stick with him into the NFL. The first weakness especially will be something that he struggles with in the NFL, and is how overall stiff he is as a player. Fulton is just a stiff player who does not have the hip fluidity to stick with quicker receivers or consistently stick with players on in and out breaking routes. Fulton should not have a problem with vertical routes, and he should be able to stick with receivers closer to his size that are not as fluid, but smaller receivers with quickness like a Tyreek Hill or someone smaller in general should be someone that can just run circles around him. Obviously, asking Kristian Fulton to stick with someone like Tyreek Hill is a misuse of his talents and just shows poor coaching, but when deploying him, you need to be aware of his limitations against certain types of wide receivers. I have two plays for this, and they're both fairly simple, as it was something I saw several teams do against him in a quick slant inside with a stutter step to stop him cold, as he's unlikely to be able to stick with it. If not accounted for, it can allow for some easy completions against him, and could be worse if the play is allowed to develop further down the field, and then they do something like this. The final weakness that we were talking about, we will get through quick, as is something I do not value very much for cornerbacks. That is his effort in the run game. On most run plays that I was watching, he just never made much effort to disengage once the wide receivers got their hands on him. When he was given an opportunity to try and make some tackles, he did fine, but generally on run plays, he just didn't seem to be giving his absolute full effort. Like I said, I personally don't value how cornerbacks do in the run game because I value coverage a lot more, but I thought it was worth mentioning as a potential weakness. If we take a look at the two plays I have here, we can see that he is just completely blocked out of the play on each, and not by particularly big receivers or anything like that. It is concerning, but not important to drop him much, if at all. Teams may drop him more than I would, but I still think that he is a great player in coverage that can make up for this. Now we are done with Fulton's strengths and weaknesses, and this year, since I'm not doing comparisons, we are moving right into my final thoughts on the player and where I think he should go in the 2020 NFL Draft. Like I mentioned earlier, Fulton is a player with a clearly defined set of strengths and weaknesses that should translate to the pros. I think giving him more plays where he can keep his eyes on the quarterback could help his overall interception production, as both of his two 2019 interceptions came on such plays. However, even if you draft him in the first round, you are still getting a cornerback with clear value as a guy that is rarely beat deep and can handle most receivers fairly well. Obviously, he has limitations in terms of who he can cover, and he will occasionally give the big play, but he should immediately give steady cornerback play to whoever drafts him, and that has good value. When you're drafting any player, even sometimes in the top 10, you're always accepting that there are limitations. And when you get further down and further down, you're accepting more and more limitations. And the ones that Fulton has, I don't think are that big of ones for him to be taken in the first round. Teams anywhere in the second half of round one that need reliable cornerback play on the outside, they should be considering Fulton. I would feel comfortable taking Fulton in anywhere around the early second as someone I see with a limited ceiling, but he's a good floor of good play, so I'm a fan anywhere outside the top 20. He's a good player, and if he falls in the second round, someone's getting a really good player at a really good value. For anyone who listened and enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, as there will be a lot more of these videos coming. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try to respond to everyone. This video on Fulton was done because he placed first on a poll I posted with one of my recent videos, and up next I'll be taking a closer look at Boise State offensive tackle Ezra Cleveland, and after that we'll be taking a look at another cornerback in Auburn's Noah Igbinoghene. I'm going to work on the pronunciation, I'm really sorry. Thank you very much. This has been LB3 Scouting, and there'll be a lot more great stuff coming, so make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss a thing.